Welcome to the Hockey Writers Union Junction, a weekly show from our Columbus Blue Jackets insider, Mark Scheig, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, he covers everything that happens with the Jackets. So get ready. It's time for another get-together at Union Junction.
Well, hello, Blue Jackets fans. Welcome back to Union Junction. Mark Scheig, your host here. It is December the 9th already. At least up here where I'm at, snow is starting to come down. Unfortunately, that's a representation of how the Blue Jackets have been playing. So we have a lot to talk about here. And to help us out with that, of course, my esteemed co-host, Cody. Welcome back.
Yep.
And Nick joining us as well. We got so much to get into. We're going to do this in about 30 minutes. We're just going to jump right into it. Nick, we'll start with you here. Just look at the recent swing that this Blue Jackets team has had. I recently wrote an article about how inconsistent it's been. They've won a couple, they've lost a couple, win one, lose one, win three, lose four. So there's a lot of inconsistency there. They got hammered on the road, came home to San Jose, got a win. And then for the first two periods, Tuesday night against the Leafs, they got absolutely hammered. So I guess, what do we make of them? What do we make especially of their defensive play as of late? Because it just seems like they're letting in goals just by the bushelful here.
Well, I think, what we've got to remember is that this is what was expected from this team. There's a bit of a bump early on in this season. You could contribute that a bit to, I'm sure everybody was playing for Matisse. They got a bit of a bump, not playing for Tortorella anymore. So I think the kind of that initial high of that emotion that they were all feeling, that's kind of worn off. And now we're getting into that grind part of the season where, this is a younger team, one of the youngest in the league. It could be the youngest. I'm not 100% sure in terms of average age, but this is the tough part of the season, that those late November games in through usually until around February. This is when you see those good teams who are really capable of taking it to that next level are able to stay consistent. And the younger, less experienced teams are, they kind of falter a little bit. And that's what we're seeing from this Blue Jackets team right now, I think. Moving forward, that's going to be something they're going to want to improve on. But I think it's important to remember that while we look at these score sheets, this is what was expected headed into this season.
Yeah, Cody, I mean, Nick's right. There's a lot of expectation. A lot of people expected this to happen and just happened maybe a little later than anticipated. What have you seen here? Is there anything that's really sticking out to you as to why they're letting in 4 goals a night, 5 goals a night on a pretty consistent basis as of late?
I think one of the things you have to look at is after they traded Seth Jones, the defensive core for the Blue Jackets is more offensive minded. And when you have more offensive minded defensemen up in the play, you're just going to give up more goals. Boquist is known as an offensive defenseman. Nick did an article on that a couple months ago. And same thing, you have Werenski. He likes to be up in the play. And some of that's just they're not going to get back in time and they're going to give up goals, especially when the forwards aren't covering for them. I mean, I think we're just seeing basic growing pains that we knew we were going to see. No one at this point thought the Blue Jackets were going to be 13-11 with 26 points. And I think that's just catching up. I think that youth is just catching up to them at this point.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wrote about the other day. And on Tuesday was that whole point about them showing their youth. That's kind of the characteristic of being a youthful team is, yes, they have a lot more skill than we're used to seeing. Remember when Tortorella was here, you saw a lot more grinding out, a little bit of skill mixed in where you can see the upside of some of these players. I mean, Zach Werenski is still a young player in this league, even though it seems like he's been around for forever. Adam Boquist, especially as of late, has broken out offensively, scoring goals, but you could tell he's learning the defensive end of the game. Andrew Peak, same thing. He's still learning. He's made some strides, but still learning the defensive end of the game. Vlasov Gavrikov is somebody who's even made some strides offensively as well, but he's seen as a shutdown defender, but he needs a little bit of help. And then as of late, that bottom pair has been kind of a little bit of a rotation now. We'll talk about Scott Harrington in a little bit being waived. Gavin Bayreuther's been in. Gabriel Carlson's been in the last couple of games on that bottom pair. So there's a lot of mixing and matching, a lot of learning going on. And then, but it's a whole team effort too. Elvis has had his moments of being really good in net, but when the defense and the forwards have struggled, he's been pulled a couple times here. So this is definitely a team thing, and it's growing pains, as you guys have called out. It's just something that I think we have to get used to this for now, with it being expected. Eventually they'll come out of it, they'll learn, they'll get better. If they're still doing the same things at game 60 that they're doing now, maybe at that point you start to worry a little bit about, okay, are they really developing or not? But right now it's like, okay, we knew coming in that it was going to be kind of a new look roster, a younger roster. And as Nick said, one of the youngest in the league. I believe they still are at this point. So yeah, you just have to kind of ride the wave. You're going to get some good nights. They're going to, they can score some goals if they especially get their power play going. But they're getting 3 goals a night, 4 goals a night, sometimes 5 or more. Watch this, and we're going to talk about the road here in a second. But when you have to play the Edmonton Oilers and their vaunted power play, a resurgent Canucks team under a head coach who's known to be an offensive coach. Calgary is one of the best teams in the league, and Seattle is the only team that's actually beaten Washington, Carolina, and Florida this year. So let's just jump right into that. Let's talk about the road. Now, they have the game against Anaheim on Thursday, and that's no slide. They've been really good. If you guys saw the goal the other night by Sonny Milano, we could talk about that for 10, 15 minutes if we wanted to. The play by Trevor Zegras, looking like he was going to do the Michigan, but then throws the puck in front and Milano bats it out of midair. But the games are really tough here, and that's what the Blue Jackets are going to be facing. So, Cody, I'll go back to you. They have Anaheim on Thursday, the Sonny Milano revenge game. And then they've got to play out west against Seattle, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. And then they have to come all the way back east to play in Buffalo before they come back home again. They're 4-8 on the road this year. They're 9-3 at Nationwide Arena. They're 4-8 on the road. Is there anything in your mind that could explain why they're so good at home and not so good on the road?
Again, they are young, and it is sometimes harder for those younger players to play on the road. But I think one of the biggest factors you need to look at is the environment in Nationwide Arena this season. Mm-hmm. I think they are really feeding off the fans' energy in the building right now when they're at home, because they look completely different, like a completely different team when they're at home. And I think a lot of it has to do with that incredible environment.
Nick, is there anything that to me, it's a hard question to answer because every game is different, but it feels like a little bit of a trend at the same time that it's kind of hard to pinpoint. Is there anything that sticks out to you as to why they struggle on the road so much?
Yeah, I'm not sure about why on the road, but I think Cody's got it right on the head. They've really been feeding off of that environment. And I don't know if it was the year off that just made Columbus fans like a little bit more rabid this year. But they're bringing it every night. I think it could also be the new makeup of this team that's really got fans really excited, because this is a franchise that's never really went for an offensive first mentality and actually had, the star players to kind of back that up. So that in itself has kind of got a lot of fans excited. So I don't know. There's just there's something different about the feel of the fifth line in Columbus this year. I don't know if that's something that I'm just imagining, but it seems like everybody is like really, really all on board this year, and really the team is also feeding off of that a lot.
Yeah, most definitely. In the games that I've been in Nationwide Arena, yeah, you can feel that there's an energy there. Like the fans, I think, are re-energized because of the way that the offseason went, and they've come in. They had a lot of fans didn't go last season and they finally got the chance to get back in there to be able to cheer their team on. So there's definitely something to the feeding the crowd. Jack Roslovic being a hometown guy, bringing Sean Corrali in being a hometown guy. It's something where there's a connection there, and it's genuine. It works both ways, and it's very much needed, especially for a young team, especially when there's lots of struggles. They need something to be able to lean on, and that certainly is absent on the road. They have to be able to generate energy and momentum and different things, and I think that's the one area that the Blue Jackets have really struggled in on the road, especially, is the momentum thing. If you take a look at the individual games, like I'll pull out a couple of examples just to put it in perspective. The Capitals game, first 40 minutes, they could not break the Capitals defense down whatsoever. They just could not find any momentum whatsoever. Played better in the third period, but still it wasn't enough. Go back to the Dallas game, played an okay game for the most part in Dallas. Certainly I think probably the best game of the trip, all things considered. But for that span of a minute at the end of the second period, they went from winning to losing. So that even though it was just a little bit of time, they still kind of lost their composure, and it cost them a game. And then if you look back at St. Louis and Nashville, first shift of the game, Boone Jenner's in front of the net. They have a good scoring chance. And I don't think they had another good one the rest of the night for that matter. Just Nashville completely dominated. They could not find momentum. Then in St. Louis, so the night after the Canucks game, the Canucks ended up dominating, but the Blue Jackets found a way to win. They had a great first period, up 1-0. And then St. Louis came out and said, we're going to do whatever we want. And they did, and they scored 3 unanswered goals. So I think that being on the road, they don't have the fans that they can lean on. And it's certain, that's part of the learning process here. But the breakdowns, like they're just puck decisions, momentum, these are all signs of a young team. And that's something that, we knew coming in that they were going to have to learn how to be able to manage that situation. It's not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to work in their favor, but it's being able to manage it and find a way to flip it back in their favor. So is there an easy fix for it here in the near term? Well, we're certainly going to find out when they have to go to Seattle, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, and Buffalo here. Will they be able to put some of those lessons into play? Not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a season. It's probably going to even take more than that. It gives them a time to gel, gives them a time to learn their systems. I just don't see an easy fix for these road struggles. And guys, am I missing anything with that?
I don't really think so. I think you're pretty right on the head there, Mark. And going back to those games, you mentioned the Dallas game. Something that really jumped out to me in that Dallas game is that also right at the end of the game, I think they had their goalie pulled because they were really trying to push to tie it up there. And I couldn't help but think this is one of those situations where they really need Patrik Laine. So that's another thing to deal with these big struggles, is that they are missing a guy who early on in the season proved to be a really clutch player and be a huge part of this team. So that's another thing that it's just definitely not in their corner right now.
Yeah. So let's, since Nick brought up Laine, we're taping this on Wednesday night. So it's Thursday. You're watching this on Wednesday. Brad Larson went on his weekly appearance on 97.1 The Fan on Hockey and Hounds, and he admitted a couple of interesting things about Laine. So the first thing was that Laine is expected to join his teammates on that road trip, which is good news. However, he's still working his way back into game shape, still working his way back from the injury. He's not, the quote that Larson said was that he's not going to, it's going to be a few games that he's still going to be out, that's for sure. So not going to play Thursday against the Ducks, and is most likely doubtful for the entirety of the road trip through that five city road trip. So it's a great point though. I think they're around a 500 team with him out of the lineup, and there's a missing void there. Where you don't replace him. You can try to replace him. He's got the world-class shot, and you take him out like that, and it affects the power play, it affects the lines, and Now they're trying to make it up as best they can. And when you realize, how good he actually can be, it's hard to make up. So Cody, yeah, I mean, just the whole Laine thing, how much do you feel like that the Blue Jackets have missed them in your sight?
A lot. You mentioned the power play. Their big shot threat on the power play is gone. And I feel like it's letting the opposing penalty kill kind of play more aggressive and disrupt the power play more.
Yep.
And the one thing that I am thinking about with this Laine situation is that could be a place where Bemström has an opportunity to fit in when he comes back, because Bemström has a strong shot like Laine. It'll be interesting to see if he can kind of fill that gap. He's not going to completely replace Laine, but see if he can actually help with that a bit.
Yeah, we're going to, it's great that you brought up Bemström. Real quick before we move on here, about halfway through the show, just want to remind you fans, this is not the only show that we have here at the Hockey Writers. We have several shows that we have like this that tape every week, whether it be, you want to talk about the Sabres, you want to talk about the Blackhawks, you want to talk about the Red Wings, the Maple Leafs, the Kraken, we can go on and on, the Coyotes. We have so many different teams here. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and you will not miss any of these on any of your favorite platforms. So if you're Spotify, if you're Apple, if you're iHeartRadio, if you prefer to watch on YouTube, doesn't matter. We got you covered. We are available at your convenience in audio form as well. And this show comes out, I said, every Thursday morning. We have both here on YouTube and also on audio on your favorite platform. So make sure that you subscribe and like this so we can get out to more people. And as well, we have the Morning Skate, that newsletter. Make sure that you guys subscribe to that. Some really neat things delivered to your inbox every morning, compliments of the Hockey Writers. So let's talk about it. I like what Cody brought up, Emil Bemström, because on Wednesday, a couple things happened. They first, going back to Tuesday, they waived Scott Harrington. So we'll talk about him in a minute. But then on Wednesday, when Harrington cleared waivers, Emil Bemström got called up from the Monsters. He knew that he was injured. Now he's up on the big club. So that puts it down to 7 defensemen. And they have the extra forward now. It makes you wonder if he's going to get in right away or what the plan might be. So Nick, let's start with you. What do we think about Bemström? Is he still have to wait his turn? Is he going to come back right away? And then what could we possibly expect when his number gets called?
Well, you got to just see where he fits in that lineup. I think the easy guy that a lot of people would have looked at, 2-3 weeks ago to come out would have been Justin Danforth, but he slid into a center role, and he's done all right in that center slot. So he's making it a little harder to come out. So the question is, who are you going to pull from that forward core? It wouldn't surprise me to see somebody drop out just for a night to get Bemström in there and see what he's made of. Because it seems like there has been a bit of rotation between some of those bottom 6 guys the last few games. But he's in a tough spot because Bemström's the kind of guy that, he's more of a top 6 kind of player. I don't know if he's a top 6 talent, but the style of his play is kind of more suited to that top 6 type of role. And that's kind of the area where he's meant to thrive. And he just hasn't been able to put himself in that position to thrive in that spot yet. So, he's more of an offensive guy. So, we're going to see, like Cody mentioned, he could be a fit on that power play. I think that would be a good slot. He's got some history with Adam Boquist. So that might be a good pairing to, maybe try and jolt him up a little bit. But he's an interesting player that we've just been waiting to see for a long time what he's really made of. And, he's getting up there. I mean, he's not super old. He's 22 still, but, he's got some chances. And now this is as good a time as any to see what he's made of. Cody, what are you thinking about Bemström?
Like I mentioned, I think putting him on the power play right now would be helpful because we're missing that shot from Patrik Laine, and Bemström arguably can replicate that somewhat. And I just think we need to have a shot threat on the power play right now. they just are struggling on not struggling. They are better than they have been, but they just are missing that shot on the power play, and it's letting teams be more aggressive on the penalty kill.
Yeah, they're targeting Voracek because he's the playmaker. They're very, if you watch the Leafs game, they're very aggressive against him. So yeah, they can adjust, but when Laine comes back, they can utilize that first power play unit where they got a threat everywhere, where Werenski can shoot the puck, Boquist can shoot the puck. It's interesting that they've gone with 2 defensemen there on their top power play. They can get Bjorkstrand going, get Laine going, get Boone Jenner going. So it's multi-layered, taking Laine out, and can Bemström jump right on that top power play unit? That remains to be seen. I think the thing that I want to see though with Bemström, guys, is it's time to show what he's made of here. He's been up here long enough. He's been in North America long enough. I know he's had a little bit of bad luck, with injury or whatnot, and waiting his turn, but he came with some hype. You can see like little glimpses of what he can be. It's just a matter of can the Blue Jackets finally find a way for him to be in the right spot in order to succeed. And that's going to start. It might start Thursday if Larson decides to put him in right away, or it might start on the road trip. I mean, obviously, they haven't had much success as of late in the win column, so there's bound to be some changes here. But they've got to find his game, because if there's anybody that can pop because of what he can bring, it's Emil Bemström. So we'll see what the Blue Jackets are able to do in that regard. So Scott Harrington, that's the other part of kind of that transaction. He got waived. He's in the last year of his contract. I think he's like around $1.6 million in cap hit. Interesting, because I didn't expect it to happen, but with injuries and stuff kind of coming up here, people are going to be coming back soon. Where they just want, they brought Emil Bemström up. Someone had to go, and Harrington needed waivers, and they may have happened. I see some fans were very happy with this move. Like they feel like that it was a year or two too late for him. But you just kind of wonder, with it being the last year of his contract, and there's already 70 on the roster. Now, he was the 8th defenseman. Have we kind of seen the last of Scott Harrington here? I'm kind of wondering, barring injury, he could be very useful in Cleveland to be kind of that veteran presence to help some of the young guys along down there. But he's been very serviceable when he's been here. But I just wonder if maybe we've seen the last of him in Columbus, barring injury. What do you guys think?
I think we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think Harrington does not fit what they're trying to do on the defensive side of the puck. They want fast defensemen who are more offensive minded. Scott Harrington was tied for the worst plus minus on the team at -4, but the problem is he only had 1 assist, 1 point. So I feel like they feel like he is giving up goals, but he's not helping to produce them in the end either. The only Gavin Bayreuther is -5 on the plus minus, but he has 4 points. And I think that's some of what they're doing here. They're evaluating his offensive skill compared to how many goals he's given up, and it's just not there this season. And I think they feel like their defensive core is good enough without him.
Yeah, and Nick, so you look at the bottom of the rotation, right? See, Gavin Bayreuther's been pretty good in a limited role, kind of some ups and downs. Andrew Peeke has kind of settled in as that right shot defenseman who's settled in kind of on the bottom a little bit. They brought Gabriel Carlson in. Still got to forget, he's a former first-round pick and somebody that the Blue Jackets seem to still believe in here. So if you count those 3 and then the 4 above, of course, being Boquist, Gavrikov, and Werenski, that kind of phases Scott Harrington out. So hindsight being 2020, it shouldn't shock us. Is that the way you see it too?
Honestly, I hate to say this about a guy because this is an elite athlete that we're still talking about. To make it to the NHL, incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But, in terms of looking at that 5, 6, 7 D slot, there's just nothing that really jumps out about Scott Harrington. I don't know if that's just me, but he's 28 years old, so we're kind of seeing what we've got. There's not generally much in terms of more growth after 28. I'd say this is probably the last that we'll see of Scott
we
Harrington.
know what we get from him, and he's a serviceable guy. If you need somebody to fill in, he can do that at the bottom, and just time seems to have run its course a little bit. And he might come back if injury happens or might not, but if this is it, in a sense, that closes off an interesting trade. And Kirby Reichel, anyone? Yeah, so that's an interesting side note there. But you know what? Listen, he was put in a really tough position, Harrington has, and knowing that he was going to be scratched on most nights, having to be able to stay ready. But you know what? When it came to morning skates and practices, he was usually one of the first ones out there. He put in the work, very dedicated to his craft, one of the nicer guys that you're ever going to meet. This is not a shot at his personality or anything like that at all. It's just the team is in a place now where they seem like they've got 7 solid defensemen. And you know what? He can still play in Cleveland. He can still mentor some of the guys down there. Like there's a Jake Christensen down there that Harrington could certainly mentor, and some other players like that as well. So he's still got use. It's just as the 8th defenseman, if you're looking at roster construction, do you want to have that 8th defenseman there, or do you want to have that extra forward? Clearly they thought, we need that forward now. And that's the direction it goes. So will we see Harrington in the future? I guess time will tell.
Well, and the other thing, Mark, is, if you do look at that Kirby Reichel trade, based on where Kirby Reichel is and where Scott Harrington was and what he did with the Blue Jackets, that's a win in that trade.
It's making the most of it. Yeah,
for sure.
Tough
to lose a first round pick, but
tough to have that draft pick go the way it did, but still make the best of it for sure. But before we wrap this show up, guys, there's one more topic we got to talk about here, and that's the goaltender. Joonas Korpisalo is still ill. Obviously, it's Thursday, so we'll see if they make any moves or not, if he's ready to come back yet. But Daniil Tarasov has been up with the big club, had an interesting flight to Dallas, had an interesting, NHL debut. But then because of the schedule, he got to play in consecutive games, and then even made an appearance in the Toronto game because of Elvis Merzlikins being pulled. So it's a twofold question for each of you. And Nick, I'll start with you first. What did you think of Tarasov in the limited amount of action that he was able to get? And 2, could that possibly open the door for a Korpisalo trade sooner, assuming that Tarasov is possibly ready to be an NHL backup?
I'll say yes to the Korpisalo deal. I think that that's definitely on the table. We see a lot of goalies come up and shine in their first 2 or 3 games, so let's not get too ahead of ourselves. I think we remember the Troy Grosnick or whatever for the Sharks a few years ago. Got just a gnarly shutout, like 60 saves or something. And what became of him? He's, I think, in the AHL again. Yeah. But this is a guy who's highly touted, someone that, they're looking for to be a big part of this team moving forwards. And he's shown, limited action. He's looked pretty good. This is a big goalie, 6'5". Wow. That's a big goalie. You love to see somebody big in between the pipes. He's not chunky. He's 185. So he's got some flex in him. From what I've seen, there's nothing to not like. Obviously we'd like to see some wins, but from a good start from my end, and I could see this definitely opening the door for a Korpi trade. What do you think, Cody?
I think it's too early to tell if it's going to speed up a Korpisalo trade at this point. But he's been more than impressive. 3 appearances, and his goal allowed average is better than both Korpisalo and Merzlikins, and so is his save percentage. It's a small sample size, but so far he's been impressive. If he can replicate that, say another couple of appearances, then I think it's safe to start saying maybe it pushes up a Korpisalo trade. But at this moment, I think it's just too early to make any decisions like that.
Definitely agree on the trade front, even though the expectation is that he'll be dealt by the deadline. Maybe by then, if there's an obvious excitement, whether you talk to Jarmo Kekalainen or anybody within the organization, they are excited about this kid. The general belief is that his upside is even higher than Elvis Merzlikins is, and Merzlikins is a pretty good goaltender. So Blue Jackets are really blessed to be in the position that they're in. And I mean, he woke up one morning in the AHL. That night, he was playing his NHL debut, played very well, gave his team a chance to win. He gave his team a chance to win in Washington as well. And then actually did not give up any goals in the third period. And the Blue Jackets almost came back to beat the Leafs. So how could you not like what Tarasov has done to this point so far? And, it's only going to get better, because he's got that confidence now. And, let's see what he does with it. But we're clearly looking at a goaltender of the future here. And yeah, it could very well speed up something, especially if there's a team that has a need, but it'll definitely be worth something to watch. But full marks to Tarasov here, just to be able to come in like that and do what he did. He deserves credit for it. And let's see how much longer he stays here. We'll see what he does. Cody, Nick, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us here on Union Junction, and fans, always really appreciate you taking the time. Got the Ducks here tonight, and then a huge road trip, see if they can finally figure out how to win on the road. But big games coming up here, so enjoy it all. We will be back here next week. We'll talk about they'll still be on the road, so at least talk about the first part of the road trip, and we might have a guest, so stick with us. Hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you next time here on Union Junction. Take care.